The broken watch. The old clock shop at the corner of Maple Street was quiet that morning. Dust floated in the sunlight, and the faint ticking of hundreds of clocks filled the air like a heartbeat. Behind the counter sat Mr. Thomas Avery, a man in his late 60s, with silver hair, tired eyes, and hands that trembled just slightly, though never when he worked. For 40 years, Thomas had repaired watches and clocks of every kind. People said he could bring time back to life, but if you look closely, you'd see it. That quiet sadness behind his smile. Because for all the time he could fix, there was one moment he never could. It was a chilly autumn morning when the doorbell jingled and a young man walked in. He looked to be in his mid-20s, dressed neatly, holding something small wrapped in cloth. "Good morning, sir," the young man said softly. "I was told you're the best watchmaker in town." Thomas smiled faintly. "Well, I used to be." "What have you got there?" The young man unwrapped the cloth and placed a broken silver watch on the counter. The glass was cracked, the hands frozen at the 9:47. "It belonged to my dad," the young man explained. "It stopped working the night he passed away. I've taken it everywhere, but nobody can fix it." Thomas picked up the watch gently, turning it over in his hands. It was old, at least 50 years, and engraved on the back were the words, "To James. Keep your time for what matters." He looked up. "Beautiful piece. Where did your father get it?" The young man smiled sadly. "It was a gift from my mom. He wore it every day until the night of the accident." Thomas nodded, his eyes softening. "I'll do what I can." Hours passed as Thomas worked at his bench. He opened the tiny back of the watch, inspecting the gears under his magnifying lens. But something about this watch felt different. It was delicate, not just in design, but in meaning. And as he adjusted the broken spring, his mind drifted back to another watch, to another time. 30 years earlier, Thomas had been a young father himself. He owned the same little shop back then, and life was simple but full. He had a wife, Margaret, kind, warm, always laughing, and a little boy named Evan. Every evening, Evan would sit on the counter, watching his dad repair clocks. He loved the sound of ticking. He said it made the world feel alive. One day, Thomas gave Evan a small golden watch. "This one's special," he said. "It doesn't just tell time, it reminds you to use it well." Evan smiled, his eyes lighting up. "Like for playing and laughing?" Thomas laughed. "Exactly. But time, cruel as it is, didn't keep its promise." It was a rainy night when Thomas got the call. A car accident. Margaret and Evan had been driving home from the grocery store. The brakes failed on a downhill turn. Margaret survived. Evan didn't. When Thomas found his son's little watch among the wreckage, it had stopped at 9:47. The exact moment everything changed. From that day on, he stopped wearing a watch. He stopped looking at clocks except when he had to. He fixed time for others. But his own had frozen that night. Back in the present, Thomas stared at the young man's silver watch under the lamplight. The time read the same, 9:47. He blinked hard, his hands trembling. Coincidence? Maybe. But something deep inside told him it wasn't. The gears were rusted but repairable. As he worked, memories came flooding back. The smell of rain, the laughter of his little boy, the warmth of his wife's voice. When the final spring clicked into place, the watch's hands twitched. Once, twice, and then began to move again. Tick, tick, tick. Thomas smiled faintly, tears forming in his eyes. He hadn't heard that sound, that exact rhythm, in over 30 years. The next morning, the young man returned. "Any luck?" he asked, his tone cautious, almost afraid of disappointment. Thomas smiled softly and handed him the watch. "It's running again." The young man's eyes widened. "You fixed it?" "Sometimes," Thomas said quietly. "It's not about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering why it mattered in the first place." The young man turned the watch over in his hand, admiring how it ticked again. "You have no idea how much this means to me," he said. "It was the last thing I had of him." Thomas nodded. "I think I do." He hesitated before asking, "What did you say your father's name was again?" The young man smiled faintly. "James Carter." Thomas froze. Carter? Yes, sir. My mom's name is Margaret Carter. Thomas felt his knees weaken. Margaret? The young man frowned. You, you knew her? Thomas swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. She used to come here years ago. The young man's eyes widened. You're Thomas Avery. My mom used to tell me about you. Her friend who made clocks and gave her husband that watch before they got married. Thomas stared at the watch, realization washing over him. He had made this very watch decades ago for Margaret's wedding gift to her husband, James Carter. And now, after all those years, after all that pain, it had found its way back to him. His voice trembled. Your mother, how is she? She's doing well, the young man said softly. Still talks about how my dad used to bring her coffee every morning at exactly 9:47. She said time stopped the day he died. Thomas smiled sadly. It did for me, too. The young man tilted his head. What do you mean? Thomas simply shook his head. Nothing, son. Nothing at all. Just tell your mother that the watchmaker on Maple Street says hello. When the young man left, Thomas sat quietly in his shop. He listened to the hundreds of clocks ticking all around him, each one marking a second, a heartbeat, a life moving forward. He took out his son's golden watch, the one that had stopped at 9:47, and placed it beside the newly repaired silver one. For the first time in decades, he didn't feel broken. He wound his son's watch carefully, gently, almost afraid, and to his surprise, it started ticking again. Tick, tick, tick. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Maybe time didn't heal all wounds, but it gave us moments, small ones, to make peace with the past. He looked up at the photo of his family on the wall and whispered, Thank you, Evan. I think I finally fixed it. Soft piano music fades in. Sometimes life stops at a moment we can never forget, but just because the clock breaks doesn't mean time has stopped. It just means there's still time to start again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this.